Good afternoon. My name is Maya Parker, and I am a senior here at the University of Memphis with a major in communications and a minor in medical assisting. This is my PowerPoint, and it's over the power of rhetoric in scientific communications. So, for this, my research question or topic is about relating science and communication, the rhetorical styles used in scientific research for experts and non experts. My plan is to gain knowledge on how scientific researchers use ethos, logos, and pathos to persuade readers into believing what they are told and how. And with this also, I wanted to understand if it works in real life, actually, like how it actually works in real life, how people are persuaded. So why is this important, and how does it correlate to science and communication? Well, this is important because you will see how the power of using these writing techniques play a part in how we indulge in scientific communication. The information will guide you in the direction of understanding why and how researchers use ethos, logos, and pathos to obtain what they want, in that persuasion type of writing. This correlates to science and communication because science researchers use the writing to communicate with expert and non-experts all the time. I believe that they use rhetorical methods like ethos, logos, and pathos to persuade and or manipulate people into believing what they are saying. And with this research, we're going to see if that is true and if and how, if it is. So with my literature review, I focused on finding articles that correlated to ethos, logos, and pathos individually, and also finding some that had a variation of each within them. When finding articles, I strove to focus on trying to keep them individually, but with these rhetorical methods, it's kind of hard, but finding them where they were all incorporated together was a lot easier. For ethos, I tried to find the ones that were persuading by using that credibility and establishment. For logos, I strove to find articles that were logic based. These are the ones that use facts and history to kind of get you to believe them. And then, of course, pathos is the rhetorical method that uses plain language and terms and uses empathy to draw people in. I believe that's a tactic that you see most often. You see it not only in writing but in commercials, especially with health and science. When finding articles that incorporated each, you notice that the tactics that are used normally stand out. They're not as difficult to find, but they all seem to have some type of correlation, and this all will correlate into my research because it is the literature review shows the how in my question of does this actually happen. So for my methodology, I strove to partake in interviews, and within these interviews, I was using open-ended questions to gather data on my research topic. I created 10 to 12 questions that I believed incorporated ethos, logos, and pathos into scientific writing, and used that data to determine whether or not this was true. At the end of every interview, at the end of every interview, I wrote my notes on a notepad and deciphered what was different and what could be compared between them. Each of these interviews were 30 minutes, and they were via Microsoft Teams, which was virtual. I wanted them to be in person, but overall, that did not work out the way I had hoped, but that is okay. Each interview was different in their own way, but correlated to the same topic, which was my main goal. I knew they were all going to be different, but I did not know how. And yeah. So for each interviewer, let me just get some information for you. So the background information for each one, findings that I got within each one, and just the primary findings of just the interviews altogether. So the first one was someone who focused on interviewing patients and families who have been in studies. So these are case studies or trials that they've been in. She interviews them afterwards, and in her writing, she uses plain language and also tends to she also tends to correlate them to helping people find hope, and strives to educate, which was something that I found important with this interview, was that she um, made sure to tell me that her main goal was to educate individuals on the clinical trials and really give them hope, which is why she uses mostly pathos and ethos. She uses ethos through St. Jude, getting that credibility, but then she also uses the stories of the people, which causes the pathos part of the concept. The next person was someone who writes mainly about clinical trials, but also writes for a magazine. She normally writes for I'm so sorry. She normally writes for other professionals or experts, so she tends to use more of that ethos and logos in her writing. This is because she um, needs to create credibility for herself by getting that history, but then she also uses factual evidence to back up her thoughts. And that history helps because it allows people to understand that people before her also had the same thought, not just herself. The last person I interviewed mainly wrote for patients and family, and due to this, she mainly uses pathos. She strives to write about topics or cases that strive to give people hope. She does this by telling stories of people that have been through experiences and tries to create that relatability between the reader and writer. Um, Within all three of these interviews, one thing that I found in common with all of them is that they all strove to educate individuals, not just manipulate them using these tactics. Um, yes, their main goal was to educate, not manipulate, which I found very important. And it also showed the reason of how they use these methods and why. So yes, in this data, what I found to be important is that each interview was different. Each one, though, had the same questions because even though they had the same questions, due to them being open-ended, they had very different answers. And this was very helpful for my research because it gave me a glimpse into different aspects of the research, not just one final conclusion. You can come up with multiple. After each interview, I realized that I got better after the first two. I had a lot of nerves. I had a lot of challenges that were faced. Just for an example, pulling up the Zoom meeting was a little bit difficult, and getting the times correctly and things like that was this is something that I encountered, but each experience was helpful towards my research. Something that went wrong, kind of like I said before, was that my research questions had changed. So then that had changed the aspect of the kinds of questions I was asking. Though they were open ended, I did have to change how I asked them, which is just something that I learned throughout each interview, which was totally okay, but just something I had to learn along the way. So, my overall reflection on this process was that the articles and interview explain how the power of rhetoric can be seen in correlation with science and communication. Science and communication is everywhere we look, and so it's important to understand that there are concepts out there that strive to use these methods as a power of persuasion. Each of the articles were different in content, but you could clearly see the rhetorical methods, and each of the interviews were also different, but you can also see how they use these methods to um, clearly help their writing and persuade others. Um, these articles are used in our everyday lives, and it's important to understand the um, concepts and how they're used. Overall, the experience I had did have its ups and downs, but I did learn a lot. In the beginning, my research was very unorganized and my topics were very broad. Um, though I thought this assignment was not going to be that hard, I was definitely wrong, and that is okay. Um, I'm just glad I was able to see the power of rhetoric is something that is true and is there. And I was also pleased to see that my initial thought on um, rhetorical methods like ethos, logos, and pathos were wrong. Um, I was proved wrong from the interviews and articles because they all strove to mainly educate, not manipulate. There are manipulative articles out there, but it's about finding the ones that don't have the misinformation and disinformation. Um, I just knew that I needed to know there were researchers out there that use these methods, how they use these methods, and why they use these methods. And I was able to find that within the interviews that I conducted as well as the articles. And after I conducted the interviews, they also gave me different articles that they have written themselves, which gave me proof of them using it. So it wasn't just them telling me how they used it, they actually showed me, which I found very helpful. Um, for someone going through this process, I would recommend that they create a detailed schedule, kind of like how we did in the beginning of the process, and really stick to it. And also pick a topic that they already find um, interesting. This is what helped me because it allowed me to enhance my writing by having um, just that interest already in the back of my mind. Um, I say this because my research was much more efficient due to the fact that I knew a lot about ethos, logos, and pathos, and was passionate about learning more about it. Um, Again, I'm very glad I was wrong about my initial opinion about manipulation through rhetorical methods, and I am excited to learn more about scientific research and rhetorical methods in the future. Thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation. I really hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know if there's any questions.